Because for the first time in my life, I'm admitting the fact that I was abused as a child.
Wow.
And then going back and having those conversations with family, and everybody's like, well, why didn't you say something?
Right.
How can you say something when the person beating the hell out of you tells you if you say anything, it's gonna get worse?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the I Live Now show. Y'all, today is a special one. And I knew I needed some help to do this one. So I called some of my brothers who are dear to my heart so we can talk about some things that have been bothering me, but also that has been in the news and that I believe that needs to be talked about today. So everybody, I want to introduce you to my brothers, Dwight.
What's up, man? How you doing, Isiah?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Then I have Bolen here. What's up, Zach?
What's up, Isiah?
Next, we have Cam Huxford. What's up, Cam?
Good to see you, man.
Absolutely. And then lastly, we have none other than Shane Foster. What's up, Shane?
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Brothers, today I wanted to bring all y'all in the room because to talk about why don't men talk? And the reason and I would say the basis for this was just what I saw last year. Many of us saw Twitch from Ellen's show commit suicide. And then we saw Tommy, I call him Tommy, from the Green Ranger, White Ranger, from Power Rangers. And every single time, I was like, did they not have anybody to talk to? Why don't we talk? And so that's what I wanted to do today, is bring men in the room so we can talk about some subjects that we usually don't talk about. That we're like, man, I'm gonna take this to my grave and I can handle it, I can do it, but it's actually can be heavy on our hearts. So I wanna just have a frank conversation. This is just a frank conversation. Why don't men talk about mental health, their mental health?
Well, I'll jump in, man. The first thing that comes to mind for me is psychological safety, right? Like, is it safe for men to be honest about how they're feeling or what might have happened at work or how something might be impacting them? A lot of people, particularly from various parts of the country and even other countries, they deal with A.C.E.s, adverse childhood experiences. And they come from households where they were taught what happens in the house stays in the house, right? We don't talk about those things. And so it was modeled for us that we don't talk, right? We saw situations happening with domestic violence in the home. We saw it happening, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We didn't see our parents talking about it. Things happen in the workplace that are discriminatory or wrong practices or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Folks just go on, don't talk about it. So in all of these spaces in our lives, we as men have been nurtured to not talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? And so you grow this tough skin that's like, whatever it is, I got to put on the Superman cape. We'll just figure it out, we'll thug it out, whatever it is. But now it feels weird when people start actually saying, nah, I need to take a break, right? And now we're all being triggered by people who we looked up to who are committing suicide, right? Who are stepping down from positions, because on the outside, it looks like everything's all good. Daryl Freeman right here in Nashville last year committed suicide, right? My man was doing so much in the business community and making an impact for people, and then now he's gone, right? And it is a moment to stop and reflect, but I think it's also important for us to really understand and go back and think about how many times in our lives it's been cultivated for us to be quiet, to not talk, because it hasn't been safe for us to do so.
Man, you mentioned A.C.E.s, and I think a lot of that too is just like, you can't talk about something you don't have language for. And so I think a lot of it too is what has been normalized, right? Like it's understood to be just a regular routine part of living, but it's actually not normal. But you can't name it until you see the opposite. And a lot of times you don't really get the exposure that you really need to actually gain language to be like, there's a lot of stuff that happened in my life that like I'm just now actually like identifying, oh, that actually wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So like I couldn't even really advocate for myself because I didn't even know that it was harming me until I got older and I started trying to maneuver into different spaces and was like hitting these walls, right? Like just this idea of just, I don't really know how to, this has just been a part of my lived experience. And I thought that it was something that was accepted. Yeah. But like experience and seeing other people's lives and seeing how other people, you know, handle trauma, handle conflict, you know, learn that like, okay, so I actually don't have to like do that. Like this isn't normal. And I think when you grow up in that, it shapes who you are. Yeah. So it shapes the way you see the world. It shapes the way you understand trauma. It shapes the way you handle conflict. It shapes the way you deal with stress or you don't deal with stress, right? And then the other thing too is, you know, especially from like the male perspective, I mean, we live in a society that has propped men up to be providers, right? That has propped men up to do all of these sorts of things and have all of these responsibilities. And so when you don't have language and you're placed in situations where you have all of these responsibilities and you don't have tools or resources to navigate those responsibilities well, you end up spiraling. But then you can't really reach out because then, you know, like what Shane was saying, like then you're like, well, I'm weak for not being able to know how to deal with this. And so I think it's just a number of those couple of things too, of just like, man, if I don't have language and I'm in these spaces where I have not been taught how to navigate the stress that comes with these responsibilities that I may or may not have asked for, by the way, then it becomes this space of retreat, this space of isolation, and let me just get a minute. And so, yeah.
Dwight just made me think of something. I think growing up, one of those responsibilities placed on men is be a leader, be a good example. And I interpreted that growing up to mean always try to lead from a position of strength, you know, like never let the blood show sort of thing. Like you need to look strong, look like you know what you're doing, and be a good example because all people are following you. And if you do something wrong, they're going to follow you wrong way, which is good. But I took that a step further, which was, and I think I saw some of the men in my life take that a step further, where it was like, if you do have weakness or make mistakes or do something wrong, don't show that side because that might be a bad example. But you know, it doesn't always work to lead from a position of strength if you're not always strong. So.
Right. It's that added pressure. I feel like that's pressure, and I feel like that's why a lot of people succumb to this is because of the pressure. Yeah. Because like we know, like just take a pipe, for example, like if that pipe does not have any type of out, it's gonna burst. Yep. And like you said, because of the programming of like, yo, if you say something, you're weak. And who wants to have that attached to their identity that's just like, oh, you're weak. You know what I'm saying? Because if you cry, because I mean, from where I was from, you know what I'm saying, and you all can tell your own stories, it's like, men don't cry. It's like, it is so weak for you to show emotion. And now you have people that you can't even hug nobody. You know what I'm saying? Or you can't even hug your brother without it being weird. Like what in what world? But it's because of that pressure of what a man is supposed to be that it keeps us from being able to talk freely.
Well, I wonder if part of it's there's so much pressure to conform and for people, especially as young boys, as you get older and you know, I wasn't taught the benefit of self-awareness. And then you get older and you realize, oh, so much of my childhood is still, you mentioned this earlier, unnurtured. I was nurtured in other ways, but I wasn't nurtured in the ways I was meant to. And so you carry that into adulthood. And then I think the process that you go through of trying to actually live out of, to be someone that's vulnerable is just not attractive. When what is presented to you is to be someone who has it all together. And I wonder if so much of, in particular, like I think about growing up, for myself, so many struggles I've had in life have oftentimes, the only way I can get past them is having to confront something that happened when I was younger. And that's really, those are always the things that are keeping me from moving forward, because when I confront those things, I identify weakness and I have to decide, am I gonna suppress it or am I gonna choose to deal with it?
When you talk about pressure, man, what hit me is how much pressure comes from the people who love us. People who are in our lives who's supposed to be protecting, teaching, forming, nurturing. But that's where the pressure comes from. How we define success, right? My brother brought up, you know, as men, we're supposed to provide, right? But what happens when I lose my job?
Right.
And I don't know how bills are gonna get paid.
Yeah.
Now I'm attaching that to my manhood.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm attaching that to my identity. It has nothing to do with identity,
Yeah.
but because that's how the people who love me define success, right? My brother here brought up, you know, wanting to impress certain people, right? Wanting to make sure that, you know, you're seen more attractive when you fall into these gender roles and these norms and all this stuff, right? So if I like somebody, I got to be able to take them on a date. But what if I can't take them where they want to go? Or what if we get there and the menu is more than what I got in my pocket? Then now I'm less of a man.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly making decisions trying to attain this idea of what man is supposed to be that might be putting me in harm's way.
Yeah.
So when you see people out doing drugs, they're coping.
Yeah.
It's not they just want to do drugs.
Right.
You see people who you know are drinking too much. It's not like they just enjoy alcohol all that much. They're trying to cope in most cases with a version of themselves that they're trying to attain that unfortunately may not even be attainable, may not even be the right way to go, right? And we don't get to define it for ourselves, right? That's why this conversation is so important, because it's critical that we give people the agency to choose for themselves how they show up. Not how you know your dad is gonna approve, not how some partner is gonna want to be with you, or not trying to be like something that's gonna be some other level of success. Like, you choose for you how you want to show up.
Yeah. You know, found out like a year or two ago that I was suffering from seasonal depression. Anytime that it would start getting cold and dark outside earlier in the day, I was like, because I would always gain weight at the same time of every year. And then the next year, I'm able to get it off but I could never identify it, because that was the time, you know, my dad passed away when I was 17 in 2007. So having to go home to Thanksgiving and Christmas and see all your family, see all your cousins with their father, it was like, and then you don't have a house to go home to. It's like, so it's like, man, let me eat. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I found comfort in. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, but you, like you said, you cannot really do anything about it until you understand what it is and be able to give voice to it. So I was like, oh, this is seasonal depression. So it's just like, now I have to consciously be like, all right, come end of October, I need to have things in place to be able to counteract, because it's coming. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what, when you were talking about that, I was just like, oh, seasonal depression is real too. Of just like, oh, I'm good now, but end of October, check on the brother.
Call me. But that's the thing, right? Like, because when you know it's coming, you can plan for it. So like, you know, like, all right, I need some more phone calls. And we've actually had this conversation where it was like, yo, like, we need to check in more because your homie coming on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, like, but like, I think a lot of times, like, men struggle to speak because they haven't identified. But like, to your point, like, when you're able to identify it, you're able to plan for it, you're able to create. You know, I like, for me, like, that's a similar story of mine. So like, I know that like every Sunday I need to be at the grocery store. Why? Because I know that if I have not stocked my house, by the time Monday comes, that entire week is gonna be a wash. from food, right? Like
Yeah.
because I am going to indulge and I am going to overindulge because I picked up along the way like these different things that like kick me into like wanting to go eat or you know
Yup.
different things like that. So like it, but I mean that really helps. Like when you start talking about being able to open front forward.
Yeah. I feel like on that end of what's causing the mental health are the things that we cannot talk about and the things that we do suppress. And which leads me to that next question of why don't men talk about childhood abuse, whether verbally, sexually, any type of abuse? Why don't men talk about that?
I mean, I wonder if, at least for me, you start to believe this. I mean, I experience this even with, talking with my kids as they're going through little things, like dealing with, does this kid like me at school, whatever it is. And you start to believe these things when you're struggling with stuff that you're the only one.
Yes. Yes.
And I know for me, so many of the things that I suppressed into adulthood was built on this belief that I couldn't talk about it because someone wouldn't understand. And I think what I realize now is that we all have autonomy because we have our own experiences, our own stories, but then we have camaraderie too with one another. And I think what is really powerful, if we're willing to listen and hear from each other, is we can learn a lot through each other's stories, but we just have to be willing to take that first step of vulnerability. And at least in my experience, the most helpful ways I've been able to get there is when someone else takes that step for me.
Take that step for you, like how?
They open up, and then I feel like I can do the same.
Power of your testimony. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't necessarily be a testimony. It has to be like, somebody is like me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can speak to that, you know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't until, many of y'all all y'all know my story. Like, I experienced childhood sexual abuse and molestation from guys, and it wasn't until this lady took me to the Chinese restaurant, out of all the places to go. She took me to a Chinese restaurant because she saw me at church and she was like, I see something in you. There's something about you. I want to, take you to lunch. I was like, cool. She took me to lunch and she told me that she had experienced childhood sexual abuse from her dad. The man that is supposed to protect you and love you is the one that's actually causing you harm. Y'all, over a bed of egg rolls, your boy just lost it.
Yeah.
Because there was somebody who knew that how I felt. Like I could finally put something, because it's just like what we were just talking about. It's like you can put on face and you know how to cover it and you know how to mask it to where it's just like, I know how to get through the day and then I'll go behind closed doors and cope with the pain of the thing. So it wasn't until that she told me her story that gave me permission to start healing and to give that thing voice, because y'all, our adolescent years, 0 to 7 are the most impressionable. And if those are damaged, everything else going from that will be skewed. So that's why I was just like, and I agree with you, like I feel like a lot of times we do not talk about the childhood abuse is because we don't think anybody will understand, or if there's anybody else out there like me. So therefore, let me pretend to be somebody that's like you, and then I can go and be free.
And unfortunately, we've lived in a world that has historically protected men. What I mean by that is when uncle is the one doing the abuse,
Yes.
when grandpa is the one doing the abuse, we want to protect this major person in our family. And so not only is it us not sharing so that they don't get in trouble, but you also got everybody else in the family who get a whiff that this is going on, that's saying, yeah, well, that's just how they are. They don't mean anything by all the excuses, right? And the same thing happens, and this is what I've heard from a lot of women in the work that I do around engaging men in violence against women and girls, is that why is it that we always protect the one that has done wrong, not realizing that we sacrifice the autonomy, the well-being, the humanity of the person who was harmed.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in the workplace. You get a CEO who is out here sexually harassing people in the workplace, and they get away with it for years and years and years, and everybody around them is participating, some unknowingly, some knowingly, participating in this culture where this is acceptable behavior, right? You got so many men who have gotten away with that for so long that when the Me Too movement came around, folks was like, well, I don't see what the big deal is. This is just, I didn't do anything different than my mentor or the person that came before me. And I tell people all the time, just because something was accepted don't mean it was right.
Right.
Yes. Normal.
And we've all just gotten cultivated in this environment where so many things have been accepted, right? Like the phrase rule of thumb. That literally originated because it was legal to beat your wife as long as you used a rod that was smaller than the width of your thumb.
Yes.
Really?
That's where that phrase comes from.
Whoa.
It was so normalized. And so
Wow.
in spaces now, you'll hear people say stuff like, well, I don't even know how to crack jokes anymore because everybody's so sensitive. Like, where's the line? And how do I navigate this? And I'm like, if the only jokes you know how to tell are ones that are offensive to other people, you need some new jokes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you're probably not funny.
And you're probably not funny, right?
you're
But
just
just
not
because this has been acceptable, just because you've been able to laugh at the expense of others, just because you've been able to live your life and have fun at the expense of others, it was never right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You just got away with it,
Yeah.
right? And so when you ask the question why men don't talk about this, is because those roots run deep.
Yeah.
This didn't start with me,
Yeah.
right? Hurt people hurt people.
Right.
So what I'm sitting there dealing with, I know about it, but he didn't tell me. My dad dealt with the same thing. My mom once told me a story about the same thing. My grandmother, right? And I wrote this book, What Hurt Didn't Hinder, and told my whole vulnerable life story, right? And I had people in my own family who were like, yo, why are you even talking about this? Like, that's, like, why are you putting our business out in the street? And I'm like, well, guess what? I get it from your perspective, but this happened to me,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I'm a married man today trying to figure out what from my past is applicable and what's not. And it's murky because so many things happen that folks never stop to consider, maybe I need to frame this for shade.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to explain that there's a reason why I'm here, but it's not right, it's not okay, right? You talk about being abused. I went through childhood abuse and never called it that,
Yeah.
right? And then 30 years later, I'm sitting there having a conversation with my wife and bawling in tears because for the first time in my life, I'm admitting the fact that I was abused as a child. Wow. And then going back and having those conversations with family and everybody's like, well, why didn't you say something?
Right.
How can you say something when the person beating the hell out of you tells you if you say anything, it's gonna get worse?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Right? So those roots, when you think about why men don't talk about it, I go back to what I said before. Is it safe for men to talk about it?
I love the fact that you phrased the question, is it safe? Like, those three words can set a lot of people free. Just having a safe space where it's like, oh, if I go here, I won't be judged. If I go here, I won't be looked down upon. If I go here, I feel like that I can bear my all. Because y'all, there are some things that you just have to give voice to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there are some things, and we've all heard this phrase, I'm taking that to my grave. Who knows when you're gonna leave this earth?
Yeah.
So therefore, you got 3,749 days, 7 hours, and 29 minutes of being in turmoil. Because you have to take a thing to a grave that's like, oh, because it wasn't safe. But not only was it safe, then the perpetual cycle happens that person that was abused become an abuser.
And you're not taking it to the grave, it's actually taking you. And I think that's the thing to name is it's not that you're just harboring it.
Yeah.
It's that you're harboring it and it is causing so much pain. And I think another reason why, from the why men don't speak up is that pain can be devastatingly choking to where I am just a big proponent of just like language is everything. Having words, having ways of expression matter. And when you don't have that, you don't have a lot.
Yeah.
And I think these experiences, when they stack up on us, they take the power of words away. And so, because you could even be in a conversation, like I've been in therapy now I lost both of my grandparents at the same time in 2020. My granddad died in June, my grandma right behind him in July. My granddad was my daddy, right? Like my dad left when I was younger. And we've since circled back around, but just that moment where life is happening to you and it's happening to you back to back and it's happening quickly and you don't have a chance to recalibrate. You just settle. You really just kind of settle into into the day to day, and you don't have the space to actually like say this thing is actually bothering me.
Yeah.
Because as men, going back to this provider space, we also have calendars. We also have schedules.
Yeah.
We have responsibilities. And the people that depend on us, let's be real, they don't necessarily want to hear that we sad.
Facts.
And me being sad does not pay my light bill.
Facts.
Like me being sad does not pay, you know what I'm saying, my house. It don't pay my car.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't have a family. So if you are a father, I cannot imagine then like just, or being married or, having these other very intimate relationships tethered to the experiences of your life. Like, because as a single man, it's hard. And honestly, dating has been hard. And I know we're not there, but I think when you talk about trying to connect dots and trying to build these relationships out, not speaking those things really hinders that process.
Man, when you bring up relationships, that's a thing that in the midst of this conversation is so important, because psychological safety is not about whether or not you allow somebody to speak. It's about your response when the words come
That's
out.
good, Shane. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So if I open up and I share with you, this is something that happened to me and I'm struggling with it, or I'm still dealing with it, or I don't know what to do with it. And then in my relationship, in my safe space, you bring that up later.
Ooh.
This is not safe.
Yeah.
If I share something with you that is bothering me, considering I was nurtured to not talk at all.
Right.
So when I bring something up and your response is, well, this is not safe. So it's less about the ability and more about the response.
Wow.
Because then, you talking good. First of all. But because in that too, when it comes back on you later and someone's trying to actually use it to beat you up, like you have confided in someone something so intimately connected to you, I think the fear of speech is that it is going to come back and haunt me later.
Yep.
Because when I upset you, when I frustrate you, or when you want to be right in an argument, I'm afraid that thing is going to come back and you're going to actually use that to shut my mouth.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about kind of what you were just naming in that safe space, I think that's the thing that you have that men like balance is like, if I open up, are you going to attack me with it later?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to use this later as an instrument or a weapon You're gonna weaponize my story. You're gonna weaponize what I've been through, because I don't think I could come back from that. It took everything in my power to actually be honest about it in the first place.
Right.
If this thing comes back negatively, used against me, I don't know if I would bounce back from that. And so I think that's another reason too, to your point, Shane, like that's why men are silent.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad that y'all said that, because again, we keep saying that we need that safe place. And I feel like we also need that discernment that you do have to realize and kind of feel around to see if this is a safe place, because if they come and talk to you about other people's business, there's no way I'm gonna tell you my deepest, darkest secret so it can be on Channel 7 News.
Yeah.
Amen? I'm not doing it. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? So therefore, it's like you need that kind of discernment of like, have they been proven in other areas of somebody's secret that I'm not the person that they come into, be like, you heard about so-and-so? Let me tell you about their business. You're just not gonna get my secrets. You're not. But again, this is why people need to become trustworthy, because you may be that next person and that final person before they decide to do something that, because I talked to Zach, because I talked to Cam, because I talked to Shane, because I talked to Dwight, I no longer want to do this, because I've been able to give voice and they provided me a safe place to be like, hey, I'll never speak of this again. That's why, you know, like I pray for my home to be a safe place and a restful and peaceful place when people come in.
Yes.
That I be like, take your mask off.
Yes.
Like, take your mask off, because I know out there, you gotta be this. I get that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of your position, you have to be this. And that added pressure is just like, I know you getting beat up. I know, I can feel your heaviness.
Yeah.
When you walk in my house, I want all that to come off.
Man, I think if you can create that space for people, it'd be a gift that is like generational, because like you were saying, people want to take it to their grave. It's kind of interesting that we try to take it to our grave, but a lot of times it doesn't stop there, you know? The stuff we hold in can have a generational impact on our kids and grandkids. And so you might want to try to take it to the grave, but it's probably, the cycle's probably not going to stop there. So trying to create that safe space for people is huge, because it is hard to your point, it's hard to find a place where you're willing to say that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I kind of want to segue into the men that are married. So that knocks us out, Dwight, man.
Look,
We can rise up.
I'm gonna do what Shane wish he could do. I'm gonna cross my leg and
You just gonna sit over there with that leg up.
let me
That's
get
what
my
you gonna
phone
do.
out and take notes.
That's long limb, brothers. We're gonna get it together.
Y'all remember Rookie of the Year? How he threw that ball?
Yeah.
I don't want to
Just
flick my
leg.
leg out there. That's what
You know, retort one mic.
I told. See? Not
That's-
safe.
that's-
That's not a
that's-
safe place. That's not a safe place.
You just been
That's my
wrong
bad.
side.
That's my bad.
You said it on camera.
That's my bad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Put my mic out there.
Business in the street.
I promise I am a safe person.
See, this is what y'all get on the I Live Now show, okay? You get the real. Back to what I was saying, to the married men. When do you know it's time to take your cape off? Because you just said something about generational. If the man doesn't take the necessary steps to deal with his trauma, and sometimes because the man is the leader of the house, and the man is the leader of the wife, and the man is the leader of the kids, why don't men talk about when they need to take their cape off?
Man, when you were saying that, a thought came to mind. Growing up, I never saw my dad cry ever, because he lost his dad when he was 11, and he had made a vow to never cry again after that. So I had never seen him cry my whole childhood. And then I thought about it a couple weeks ago, because my 8-year-old daughter came up to me and said, "Dad, I've never seen you cry." And she's seen me lose people. You know, she's seen me lose people in the family. She's seen me lose friendships. And when she said that, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm just continuing that, you know, pattern of just men don't cry.
Men don't
you know?
cry.
So taking that, I don't know, I want to hear what you guys say. when to take the cape off. I
This is
don't
good.
know.
And I love that. To say that I don't know.
I don't know.
Like that is truthful. It's just like, yo, I never had that example. So I don't know. So I'm willing to hear anybody that may have, that experience on like, yo, when do you know when to take the cape off or communicate like, yo, I need rest.
So I got a thought on that.
Okay.
When I first got married 16 years ago,
Yes, you did.
we tried that. We tried to do the thing where it was, I'm supposed to wear the cape and be the person that decides everything and does it, and it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because it's a partnership.
Okay.
And for my wife and I, when I got to see when she was able to lead as well and do the things that were so helpful in our family.
Yeah.
And I could lean into my strengths and she could lean into hers. I actually felt safer to be weak because I didn't feel like I needed to constantly overcompensate
That's good.
and do the things that I wasn't very good at,
Come on.
that she was actually very good at. So at least for me in my marriage, I thankfully learned that the hard way really young. And we've spent a lot of years enjoying the benefits of trying to raise our kids in a way to where they can come to both mom and dad. Because while I didn't necessarily have that safe place growing up, we want that desperately for our kids. And so we try and model that for them is friendship. We're always telling our kids, like, we can't force them into friendship, but we have to at least model that with each other. And the way we do that is to lean into each other's strengths. And when the other is weak, it's love keeping no record of wrongs, which is hard to do. But the more you can find the freedom to let those things go, if you really truly are going to forgive, to let those things pass, there is great power in that, because now the next time it comes along and you mess up, you can say I was wrong. And it's hard to do that, especially if you're not taught to do that.
Come on.
So marriage for me has been the safest place for learning how to be a man. Like I've learned the most from that through being a husband to my wife.
That's amazing, man. Thank you for sharing that. That blesses me in many ways, man. One of the things that I've said quite often is that I appreciate my wife who gives me the grace to not have to wear the cape. Now, that being said, when you make a decision in your relationship to not do things in the most traditional or historical way of doing relationship and doing marriage, then you leave yourself in the place of unknown. So if the man is not making all of the decisions, if the man is not making all of the money, and the wife is not staying at home and having a meal ready as soon as you get home and all of this stuff, then what is this? What is right? What is wrong? What works? And we've tried to make sure that we find what works for us and give each other grace when things don't go quite right. But it's also difficult when there are moments when you go through things and because you chose that good thing that the Bible calls our wives, right? Then there's an anointing that pops up in her for what you're going through. I'll never forget, man, getting a call from my family about something personal happening with my little sister. And there was nothing that I could do about it. And it was killing me inside that there was nothing I can do about it. And I literally had an out-of-body experience. I was crying. I fell on the floor and was beating on the ground. And I'll never forget, I ran outside and just started swinging at the air, and my wife came outside and she just grabbed me and said, I got you. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what you were saying before about not knowing how to articulate what you need in that moment. I didn't have words.
Gee.
But God gave her what she needed for me in that moment. And it gave me a sense of stability, of safety, of comfort. That it's not necessarily going to just be all right when we finish crying, but you need to get this out. And this is a safe space for you to get it out. Right? And I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to bring it up later. I'm here for you. Right?
Yeah.
I think that the more we can be authentic, I think a part of the problem is that we wear the cape so much that we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
So because they're accustomed to us with the cape on, then they don't understand what's happening, and they're completely flabbergasted when we go through life and all of a sudden the cape, we didn't take the cape off, the cape just came off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the more that we can practice the authenticity of just being, the hardest thing to be is just you.
Yeah.
Right? Naked and unashamed. This is who I am. I'm hurting right now. I'm struggling right now. I don't have all the answers. And what I've figured out in this last, 7 years of healthy manhood experiment that I've been on is that, and this is probably the most important thing that I want to share with everyone who watches this. Your worst fear won't come true.
Bold.
The thing that we're most afraid of when it comes to being authentic, being transparent, just being naturally who we would want to be if we didn't feel the pressure. Whatever that thing is that we're afraid of, it won't happen. You're a child of God. God loves you.
Yeah.
God loves you so much that he literally gave his only son for you.
Yeah.
God won't allow that worst thing to happen to you.
No, I ain't married. However, comma. I wonder if we don't need to go back into the proverbial closet and just eliminate capes out of the wardrobe. Because I think wearing the cape means that we've made some assumptions of power that we don't have.
Okay.
So we've placed ourselves in the space that only the Holy Spirit can be in.
So you mean maybe we're not Superman? That's what we're saying.
Maybe we should come out of that telephone booth and just be Clark Kent, right? Because I think, and I love what you were saying about how we teach people how to treat us, but if we're only teaching people how to treat us when we have on capes, that is what they're going to expect.
Yeah.
So I had to learn over the last year and a half, I've had to learn how to stop going and to stop doing and to stop A, B, C, D, F, G, because I was teaching people that would be my response. Every time there was something tragic that happened, what was happening was every time I would respond, a little bit of me was suffering until the point to where, there was a season of time where my phone rang so much that I stopped answering it because I got anxious. I got anxious that whoever was going to be on the other end of the line was going to need something from me I could not provide them. And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So when I got into that space, I said, okay, Lord, we going to have to figure something else out because I can't run away. I can't run from this, right? And so I decided that I'm not wearing a cape. I decided that I can't solve every issue.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. I am at peace with the realization that I don't know, that I don't have.
Yeah.
Now I can pray with you, right? But I think sometimes, especially in our spaces, man, we take so much in Like we take on other people's traumas. And so we don't even know that what's stacking inside of us, some of it don't even belong to us.
Yep.
But it has gotten so warped into our existence because of those responses. And so I think for me, I'm just like, Lord, I'm tired of flying around wearing capes.
Yeah.
I'd much rather wear my jeans and my t-shirt
And your sneakers.
and my sneakers, huh? To be okay with that in spaces where people have needed me to have on a cape.
Yeah. Dope.
For me to be able to say, like, you know what, like I need to reintroduce myself to you. That's not me anymore. Right?
That's so good.
For longevity, right? Like that taking it to the grave versus what's pulling us to the grave.
Yeah.
And you say all the time about dreams and those things die there.
Yeah.
And how many dreams are in the graveyard, right? With Dr. Miles Monroe, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of that also is undergirded by this very conversation that like so much of what we have adopted and have adapted to didn't even have our permission. It didn't, oh Lord, it didn't have our say so. But we also didn't know the power of rejecting it either.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm legit in this space, like therapy, and I'm in this space right now where I'm like, okay, for the last 33 years of my life, I have assumed all of these things.
Yeah.
I need to break these assumptions down,
Yeah.
right? And figure out what is it exactly that I'm trying to pursue. Like, I want to solve the problem, but actually, is it because I just want to be relevant?
Come on.
Is it because I want to be someone that someone can count on? And at the root, that's where I get my identity from. Like I'm having to do, so like, bro, I'm having to literally break down every decision that I make and get to the heart of like, why am I doing this instead of this? You know what I mean? Because as I have broken those things down, I'm like, I'm in processing this with my mentor and I'm processing this with my therapist. And I'm going, oh crap. I didn't even realize that I was actively engaging this like this. Like I didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, but man, I'm trying in 2023, bro. I'm trying to put that cape in the garbage.
There you go.
Man, you guys, Dwight, you and Shane just both reminded me that what I look back on as one of the greatest moments of my life was a moment where I definitely had no cape on. It was probably one of the weakest moments of my life, but I was 25 years old and I was telling my wife things that I had never told another human being because from the time I was little, I had struggled with pornography. But from the time I was little to the time I was 25, I had never seen a man confess. I'd never seen a man confess pornography, or I'd never seen a Christian man openly confess sin to someone else. So I had no idea how that would go because I had never seen it happen. There's just like, there's the good men here that apparently don't do anything wrong, and there's the bad men that I hear talking about stuff. But it was all confused because I had never seen what it looks like of like Christian man confess their greatest weakness. And this crazy thing happened in church one day where like preacher read a passage from the Bible. I felt the Holy Spirit convict me. Something just said, hey, tell your wife this stuff. Which was weird because I didn't even have a way to like practice that. I was pretty sure I was going to take this to my grave. You know, the weird pornography thing was just like a weird roommate that lives in the back of the house. And just don't pay attention to that guy. Everything will be fine. He looks weird, but just don't pay attention. But one of the greatest moments of my life was when, having never seen an example of this, felt the Holy Spirit saying, heard a verse from the Bible, felt the Holy Spirit say it to her, said it to her after church, and telling her like, this is like a whole lifetime of stuff. And then she responded with grace. And that was the first time I ever saw like grace on the earth, like what I'd read about in the Bible on the earth. And that was my greatest moment. That was like one of my favorite moments of my life, and I was not wearing a cape. And actually, funny thing about it is, my wedding ring had engraved on it the verse that God used to convict me that day. So it was just like a totally miraculous thing that just God said, tell to her, and then she gave me grace. I'm like, man. And so anyway, I just think God will do these things through our wives, through friends, through community. God can do these things on the earth that transcend our categories of how am I supposed to be? Like, what is a man supposed to do? How's a man supposed to confess this? I didn't know any of that. It's just like God said, do this thing. And then I got to experience grace on the earth. And I think, we create safe spaces for other people to do that. More people experience God's grace.
Y'all, we have to talk. Men have to talk. And I hope just hearing this conversation from men has helped, one, you all to come into like our thought process of like, why don't we talk? But two, it's like men being able to provide safe places and safe spaces to let us know that we are safe. So thank you so much for watching the I Live Now show. I love you, and we'll see you next time.